Erin, tell me, what is your word of the day? What are you feeling most present to?
I'm going to go with mindful today. Today is the first day I've slowed down and haven't had a jammed calendar. So I'm very mindful of the peace that it's bringing me and the moment I have to breathe and to be in this conversation with you two.
Oh, I love that. I'm feeling very grateful. One, we have an icon on the show with us today that I can't wait to talk about. But there's been a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that has made me very, very grateful for where I am in my career and with my friends. Debbie, tell us, what's your
Tell
word?
us. Gratitude, same
Yeah.
thing. When you get to share the love in the industry towards something good with individuals that you love and respect, I don't really feel like there's anything better
Yeah.
to be in a day-to-day position. So yeah, that's my word.
Oh, I love it. Hi. Hi, Debbie Bellenger.
Hi, Jess and Aaron.
We're so glad you're here.
Thank you.
We are so glad you're here because you really are quite legendary in our industry. But I don't want to take all of the fun and give your usual bio. I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So, Debbie, will you please introduce yourself to our fit and flustered crowd?
Yeah, I'm going to do something different today. I have not done this in a podcast before, but because I'm with two friends who I love dearly, I'm going to change it up. So podcasts up until end of 25, I'd start with my career. Today, I'm going to start personal
Love it.
because just to mix it up a little bit. So I am newly married and married to the love of my life. And it's a wonderfully blessed chapter to have, that rock solid person. At this age, I feel very grateful. And you've met the man, so it's fun that you know who I'm referencing. Going through a very hard chapter personally as I watch my brother leave this earth in stage 4 colorectal cancer. The journey as it goes to in and out of hospital stays has been very difficult. And I'm sharing it because I think it is so prevalent right now. It is the rising cancer for the 30 to 50-year-olds. And the incidence of colorectal cancer in 30 to 50 is very high. So being in the health and fitness industry, I feel like my brother's journey is a reminder of our role in industry. And I've always taken this role seriously. We are public health educators in everything we do, sharing the love to friends, family, and our listeners. Please do be proactive about your age appropriate preventative health screens. And living with my brother's journey, and I have another dear friend going through a different kind of cancer, which is new to me. New news, I mean. That's my message. It's a journey, and that puts me in the grateful every day because you don't want to see family members not have all the experiences they hope to have. And yet, this story might be a little bit different if my brother had his age appropriate colo, right? So I think that's an important share for me. And then my career, I'm super blessed. For those who are new to that I'm new to meeting today, thank you for listening. I've grown up in the industry. Icon usually means old.
Oh,
What we mean.
It is when it feels that way. But I am very blessed to have grown up my entire career and stayed in the industry, although my career has morphed from fitness instructor to fitness coordinator to fitness manager to fitness director, director of wellness for hospitals, which was a medical wellness chapter of 23 years. My most favorite chapter. And that's because I got to work with individuals who were overweight, out of shape, who had no hope to feel good and didn't believe that they could exercise to feel better. And I knew different. So I had a lot of impact in those 23 years as I was working through it, and had all the big titles, made all the big money, also lost several jobs. I was one of the casualties with COVID. So I went from a senior vice president role to unemployed and was unemployed for 6 months. And that was a really good learning because that was a chapter for me where I realized I would say about 90% of my identity was wrapped up in my career.
Yeah.
And I needed to unravel myself. I really needed to get out of that. I'm a wonderful partner and sister and daughter and all the things, but boy, that was a really good chapter of reflection. And I don't regret that 6 months. So now I'm COO at Fit Bodies and sending fitness professionals to paradise and all the fun things that are coming with that. So I'm very fortunate, and I'm really thrilled, gals, to do this with both of you. It's kind of fun.
We are thrilled to have you. And that's an amazing journey into the profession and what you have seen. And I love that you started with something personal and a message that is personal to you, but that also is so necessary right now for people to hear. And I think for our fitness professionals to hear. We are in a uniquely positioned role where we can encourage our clients and remind them, like, hey, this is something you need to do
Mhm.
it. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful message.
Absolutely, Debbie. And thank you so much for sharing that with us because a lot of times we focus a lot more on physical injury. We don't really talk about the emotional or mental strain that we might be going through as fitness professionals, especially when you're caring for a loved one in that capacity. And I love that you also shared how tied up you were identity wise in your job. I know as high achieving fitness professionals, many of us are tied to those titles. They are
Mhm.
ingrained in us. And when
Mhm.
we feel like we have lost that identity, we kind of spiral for a little bit. So, Debbie, what did you do during that time where you really were trying to figure out who you were without that title?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jess. And I would highly recommend if this happens to any of you, or if it happened to me again, the first thing I did was rest. I slept a lot. So I didn't have an agenda. There was no, which is very unusual for me because I do always have an agenda. I always imagine, like you gals do, always have a list of a million things to do. So we unraveled that. And I remember sleeping in a lot and riding my road bike a lot, just not really having an agenda. And then I started to ask myself questions. What do you want to do at this time? And what I really wanted to do was upskill myself. I wanted to take time to have a career coach, which I did. I paid big money to do that. I got a LinkedIn coach. That was a fascinating learning. I got a resume coach, and all of those things helped feed my soul, build me back up to have good conversation with the right people about what's next in the career. What do I actually want? And then I spent a lot of time on Zoom in webinars learning, not being the speaker or the presenter, but just participating. And it was wonderful. And I will share the 6 months flew by. Of course, when I was let go, I thought my life was over. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so not like that. It's this little blip of time in your entire life. And I think I used it really well. I wrote cards to friends and family. I was in Texas at the time to stay connected. I talked on the phone a lot, reconnected with friends and family because I had all the time in the world. It turned out to be fairly positive, and I did some career coaching and resume done. And so I was ready for all the next things. I would get on. I remember this. I remember getting on the call with fitness friends that we were all in shutdown at the time. Fred Hoffman, Petra Kolber, and others who I'd not talked to, but I grew up with them on the Reebok team, and it was just catch up calls, and it was great. It was a really fast, enjoyable 6 months.
That's awesome, Debbie. I'm curious now listening to that story and the way that you sort of leaned into, I think, the rest component and some self care there. Looking back now over that course of 6 months, what would you capture as maybe the top three things that you learned that were maybe surprising to you or that you hadn't anticipated learning at that point in your life?
Wow, that's a great question. Number one, getting out of my own way to create space for love and a true partner. Number two, detaching myself from things. I had to let go my entire home, all the fine furniture that was in it that I'd worked really hard for in a single girl chapter. I took great pride in all of that. And the best was still in front of me. And my partner told me that. The man I married told me that.
Said
And,
only an icon could.
and I couldn't see it at the time. And it was the absolute truth. The best was ahead, which is where I am now.
That's so important for us to remember because as things are in an upheaval in our lives, we have a hard
Mhm.
time, whether we're in midlife crisis, whether we've had an injury, whether we have a loved one who's
Mhm.
suffering, whether we've lost a job. You always have that multiple day period where you can't see forward. And
That's right.
to hear from you that the best is yet to come.
Mhm.
That's so powerful and so moving. When you were heavily in your career, Debbie, of what you were talking about previously, of being very wrapped up in your professional life, that you couldn't necessarily see your personal life, and then it flipped, and you were able to give a lot more to your personal than your professional. Was there anything that you learned about boundary wise of
Mm.
where you really wanted to draw the line when you got back into working?
Yes. So that time away was the opportunity to level set and have those conversations with myself and friends about healthy boundaries because what happened next was a Hashimoto's diagnosis, right? And that's a life altering diagnosis for anybody that's had it or knows someone that has it. you now have limitations placed on you. There are boundaries on you now of things you can no longer do, even if you want to, because it's not the right thing to do for the condition. Because I can make myself sick pretty quick with my disposition of go, go, go with the Hashimoto's diagnosis. So yes, I had to learn the next chapter going forward, the self-talk of I will not work 16-hour days every day. There's no need for that. It's okay to turn off at the end of the day and stop right there. I don't need to sit at my computer all weekend. There's just no need. And the appreciation for balance. So there's a couple of things that swirl there. And then having a partner like I do that creates the safe space to just not have to do it all. That's altogether another piece of the puzzle for me for health. Like you said, Jess, good mental health and spiritual health and self-care. Having the right partner can afford a lot of the right things, because when you have that, then I'm less inclined to fill time with work because I have the balance in all the areas. So I love that question. I think some of it is just growing up and understanding what happens, having the experience of life to know that when you don't have boundaries, healthy boundaries, what might happen. And then the experience of, okay, cross the line. So what happened? Well, let's not repeat that. And that's just life. You have to have some experiences sometimes to know.
I'm dying to ask you about Hashimoto's.
Yes.
What happened that led you to go down the path of figuring out, were you feeling bad? Were you feeling different?
Yes.
What happens that you were like,
Yeah.
I gotta get tested?
It was the most curious thing ever. So we were living in Tucson at the time. We went from Texas to Tucson. And I was, in my mind, never fitter, never stronger. I mean, you live outdoors there, right? So I went out with my road bike. It was the only thing we drove across the country with, some clothes on my road bike. It was mandatory. The road bike went to Texas too, because I love road riding. And I could ride 50 miles. And I did. I rode 3 or 4 days a week. I was riding like the wind. I've never felt stronger. But I had symptoms like a headband that was too tight all the time up here, too tight at the back of my neck, this tension, both. Like I could not, 2 fingers that went numb on my left hand, the ends. That was something that stayed with me. And then indigestion started. And I had ginger chews with me all the time. That didn't do it. Extreme fatigue. Every day at 2:00, I would have to lay down. And I'm not kidding, girls. I mean, I would have to, and I was working full time. Wow. And I would just have to crash out for a second. I couldn't sit up. It was just, but I never equated the workload, the riding, the miles, because I wasn't struggling on my bike. I was flying. I really was, I had never been stronger. So after a little bit of that, I started with you start with your PCP and then you move on from there to the colonoscopy, to getting some blood work done with T3, T4 numbers a little out of whack, to a screen, of the thyroids to make sure I didn't have cancer. It was all terrifying. I'm not going to lie. Every appointment was terrifying. I'm like, what if I have cancer? But I did not get a formal diagnosis until I moved to South Carolina and found the right functional medicine doc and paid out of pocket $3,500 to have all the testing done. And I do not regret a cent. And diagnosed, and then all these natural supplements to take, which I have regulated all my numbers. My A1C was up to, that was also, how did I know? A1C was tracking up. I was at 5.9. My cholesterol, girls, 270. I'm supposed to be Miss Health and Fitness, riding like the wind. Clearly I'm not well. But all that has been regulated under her direction.
Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't feel, I had symptoms to not feel well, but I had convinced myself I was okay because I could still hike and bike like a crazy person.
Sure. And that's kind of where our minds go, is like, well, I can still show up and do X. This is something else. And it sounds like you had some kind of atypical symptoms, like the fingers going numb, kind of interest for that diagnosis. And I think you've brought up something that Jess and I have talked to other guests about, and things that we've talked to each other about, is like that not saying no. You start ECP, you did the things, you did the tests, all of them, as you've stated, are terrifying. But it wasn't until you got to a different provider that took a different approach using different methodologies and therapeutic modalities that you were finally able to get to a place where it's managed, controlled. You're living with it, but it's not controlling you. And I think that's something, again, it's a message to our listeners that it's like, just don't stop at one answer. And you've just reinforced that same thing that other guests have as well.
Yes, if there's one takeaway, definitely be your own advocate. It was the
Mhm.
PCP here in South Carolina, not the Tucson one. That was at the start of the journey. The one here said, I'm putting you on cholesterol medication and something else. And excuse my French, I basically said to her, the hell you are. I'm not taking those medicines. Thank you. And I never went back to her. I was so upset, but it was created the kind of upset to motivate me to action, to find a functional medicine doc, because I was not going to go that route. I'm not doing it. So it took me a little while to find the right doc, but it was worth the wait because I got the results and I did the work. And the
Yeah.
work was a lot of work
Sure.
to clean up my diet, to stop drinking, not like I was drinking a lot, but no alcohol, no dairy. And the other big one is stress, learning to calm myself down, to regulate my nervous system, which is not easy for me.
Do you think that you were suffering from a lot of these symptoms when you were in your 16-hour a day work weeks and you were just choosing to ignore it? And when you were able to rest is when you actually
Mhm.
started paying attention to these things?
Yes, Jess, because
Mm.
I realized through the journey that I was officially sick and tired. Do you know how I got through those 2 p.m. crashes? I drank coffee. I
Mhm.
caffeinated. And
Sure.
part of the journey with the Hashimoto's, I'm not allowed to have caffeine. So when I stopped caffeine 3 summers ago when I was detoxing, I realized again how tired I was. And I slept a lot that summer,
Yeah.
but that's what my body needed. So yes, I just kept up. You just do the things. I'll just reach for some caffeine. You keep going. We're really good at that, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If
It's
you could go
nothing.
back and tell that over caffeinated Debbie, what would you say to her?
Oh my goodness, listen to your body. It's
Yeah.
okay to rest.
Such an important message.
Yeah, I love the rest message, and this has come up before, is that specifically in our industry, and we see it on social media, we've done it to ourselves, our clients also do it, that rest, this notion of rest is somehow a reward versus a right. And
Mm.
that needs to be a narrative shift, and that it is required. It's a training modality. It's something that does lead to success and recovery, and without it, we're just continually giving ourselves permission to override our body signals and silence that. And then you finally get to a point where you can no longer override them. And then it's a disease state, and it's problematic, and it becomes harder to control and reverse and manage and reduce the limitations of that condition.
Yeah, it's a pillar of good health. And one of the things I implemented last summer, excuse me. Here we are, it's February. Another layer of self monitoring. I put a continual glucose monitor on my arm, which I still wear today.
Okay.
And I watch things like a stressful day and I'll see it on my phone and I'll get a notification of a glucose spike. It is incredible, ladies, because I love data and I see it, I trust it, and it's also allowed for me to monitor the impact if I do have a cup of coffee and tea or a difficult conversation or I'm over exercising in the heat. So we have a lot of new tools available to us. That doesn't require a prescription anymore. I buy it off Amazon. So yes, I've learned a lot and I'm in a much better place for all the learnings.
I love that. Thank you for being so open and vulnerable and authentic to your story, Debbie. We appreciate it. I know our listeners do as well, especially people who might be dealing with some symptoms like you just described, or having to figure out who they are
Yeah.
if they've lost their job recently or they're moving, even just outgrowing the job, right? So Debbie, tell
Mhm.
us as we start to wrap up, what are you done with? What are you over?
I am done with the fitness industry being led primarily by men.
Tell us more, Debbie.
We need to dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, invite me back, shall you?
Podcast part two.
Another topic. It's very evident.
Mhm.
As I said, I've grown up in the industry and I say that, and I've had the last 3 full-time roles that I've reported to female CEOs. So with all due respect, I've had women leaders, but the industry, it's just prevails. You can't open LinkedIn and see a panel with solely men or um, a webinar and it's only male panelists.
Mhm.
And I don't understand that in this day and age of there's a lot of talent. I think we all bring different perspectives and I think we should be leaning into that versus going the other way. Sometimes I feel along that line, we came out of the pandemic in reverse mode. We
Mhm.
just keep going backwards. Like it just seems like how fast can we go back to the 80s? I'm not understanding. So the
I
talent is broad based and I think we need to speak up. We just need to find our voice and create space.
I love it. I love that so much because you didn't just come at it from a problematic perspective of this is the problem. You actually came up with the solution as well as being like, there is the talent. It is out there. And
Mhm.
then we need to make sure as female fitness professionals that we're doing our due diligence and speaking up and demanding to be at the table.
Yes.
Erin, what are you done with?
I think along those lines and related is I'm really over this notion of emotional intelligence not being as respected as it needs to be, and that women are too emotional to lead. Like, let's just take a look around and see what is happening in our world, and then let's really have a conversation about what it means to be emotionally intelligent and have a seat at the table and a voice. It is something that far outweighs IQ is EQ in terms of being successful and being able to relate to people. And I've heard that sort of mumbling over the last probably year, 18 months, particularly in my former role. Well, women are just too dramatic. They're too emotional to lead. Sounds like something that someone without EQ would actually state out loud. So I'm super over that. It's not true.
No, not true at all. At all. I feel like you guys really hit home runs with what you're over. I feel as way a lot at the end of the podcast when we get to the end and I'm like, well, you've just like mic dropped both mic drops that I'm like, I'm just gonna wrap it up.
We're just gonna call
I'm
that.
over the panelists having better answers than me. No, honestly, what I think I'm over is the fact that we keep making these assumptions that because it's always been done that way, that it must continue to always be done that way. I've had a lot of conversations lately about why aren't we changing this in the industry or moving forward with this in the industry? And a lot of the feedback is constantly, well, it's always been done that way. We were successful when we did it this way. Yes, 15 years ago, 10
Yeah,
years ago, with a different audience, with a different generation. Absolutely.
sure.
But I agree with you, Debbie, of it seems that we came out of the pandemic, we wanted to go right back to what we were doing before, and our industry has changed so much. And in order to fully represent what health and wellness and fitness can do for people, we got to stop using that it's always been done that way excuse and move forward with some new and some fresh eyes. Well, guys, this was a really great episode. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in again to Fit and Fluster. Debbie, thank you so much for being here with us.
You're
Yes.
welcome. Thanks, ladies.
Erin, I'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.